Why does the US-Mexico border continue to be a hotbed of conflict and controversy? This question is as pressing now as it has ever been, with the ongoing migrant crisis escalating tensions between Texas and federal officials. At the heart of this issue is the extraordinary ruling by the Supreme Court in favor of President Biden. A ruling that permits federal Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire installed by Texas along a contested section of the border. This ruling, however, hasn't come without its share of controversy. Texas authorities argue that the removal of the wire destroys state property and undermines security, a concern that cannot be taken lightly. Further fueling the conflict, the Department of Homeland Security has demanded that Texas provide full access to the border by January 26. But Texas, asserting its autonomy, claims that the Shelby Park area is already open to the public. Yet, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents have reportedly been blocked from accessing it. This standoff has resulted in a tense stalemate with no clear resolution in sight. But perhaps the most concerning aspect of this crisis is the human cost. Migrants, in search of a better life, are caught in the middle of this political tug-of-war. Arrests for criminal trespassing at Shelby Park have skyrocketed, as Texas authorities stand their ground against what they perceive as a threat to their state's security. It's a complex, multifaceted issue where the stakes are high and the solutions are far from simple. Texas authorities continue to defend their use of state-erected barriers, while the federal government pushes for open access. While Texas authorities stand their ground, the federal government continues to push for open access. The question remains, how will this crisis be resolved and at what cost? This is the reality of the migrant crisis at the US-Mexico border. What's the story behind the Shelby Park standoff, you might ask? Well, it's a tale of a disputed section of the US-Mexico border, razor wire, and a standoff between Texas and federal officials. The heart of the dispute lies at the Shelby Park area, a contested section of the border. Texas officials insist the area is open to the public. However, the story is different from the perspective of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents. They claim they've been effectively blocked from accessing the park. No clear timetable has been given for removing the wire installed by Texas along the border, even after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of President Joe Biden, allowing federal Border Patrol agents to do just that. The Department of Homeland Security even demanded full access to the border from Texas by January 26. Yet, as the deadline looms, the wire remains. In response, federal Customs and Border Protection agents have announced their readiness to cut through the fencing, but only for life-saving or critical operational matters. This decision did not sit well with Texas. The state sued to stop the wire cutting, arguing that it destroys state property and undermines security. The stakes are high at Shelby Park. Texas authorities have arrested migrants for criminal trespassing there. The Texas Military Department is holding the line to prevent unlawful entry into the state. On the other side, the Biden administration has warned Texas to stop blocking Border Patrol's access to a 2.5-mile stretch along the border, or face intervention from the U.S. Justice Department. The standoff at Shelby Park is a testament to the escalating tensions at the border. It's a microcosm of the larger conflict, a flashpoint in the ongoing crisis. Each side stands firm, with the fate of the migrants caught in the middle. What happens next in Shelby Park could be a harbinger for the future of the US-Mexico border. How is Texas fighting back in court, you may ask? Well, the Lone Star State has been embroiled in a legal battle, challenging federal decisions at each turn in an effort to maintain control over its border territory. The heart of the dispute involves the removal of razor wire installed by Texas along a contested section of the US-Mexico border, a move that the state argues destroys its property and undermines security. Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the Department of Public Safety have been at the forefront of this legal fight. They staunchly defend the use of state-erected barriers, asserting that these measures are crucial in safeguarding the state's borders in the face of a persistent migrant crisis. The state's legal stance is firm, maintaining that it is within its rights to protect its territory and citizens. But the battle isn't confined to courtrooms and legal documents. The on-ground reality paints a vivid picture of this ongoing struggle. At Shelby Park, a flashpoint in this border dispute, Texas authorities have arrested migrants for criminal trespassing. The state's law enforcement officers and the Texas Military Department are holding the line at this park, determined to prevent unlawful entry into the state. These actions underscore the state's commitment to its legal stance and its readiness to enforce its border security measures. This legal battle is about more than just a physical boundary. For Texas, it's about asserting its authority and control over its borders. It's about maintaining the state's right to protect its property, its security, and ultimately, its people. The state is standing its ground, fighting back against federal decisions it believes infringes on its rights. Texas's legal battle underscores the state's determination to assert its authority over its borders. As the migrant crisis continues, the Lone Star State remains steadfast in its resolve, ready to fight for its rights in court and on the ground. This is more than a border dispute. It's a testament to Texas's commitment to its sovereignty and the safety of its citizens. What has been the federal government's response? In the face of this escalating crisis, the Biden administration has not been standing idle. They've issued a stern warning to Texas, demanding that the state stop blocking Border Patrol's access to a crucial 2.5-mile stretch along the border. What's at stake? Well, if Texas doesn't comply, the administration has made it clear that the U.S. Justice Department will intervene. This warning is part of a broader conflict between state and federal authorities over who gets to control the border. As the migrant crisis deepens, the stakes of this conflict are only getting higher. On one side, there's Texas, asserting its rights as a state and arguing that it needs to secure its own borders. On the other side, there's the federal government, insisting on its own authority to control immigration and border security. This is not just about a 2.5-mile stretch of borderland, it's about the larger question of who gets to decide how the United States handles immigration. Does each state get to make its own rules, or does the federal government have the final say? This is a question that goes to the heart of American federalism, and it's being played out, in real time, in the dust and heat of the Texas-Mexico border. The Biden administration's warning is a clear sign that they're not backing down. They're ready to assert federal authority over border control, even if it means clashing with state governments like Texas. And with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in favor of the federal government, they've got the law on their side. But Texas, too, is not backing down. Governor Greg Abbott and the Department of Public Safety continue to defend their use of state-erected barriers. They're arguing that the federal government's removal of these barriers would destroy state property and undermine security. As the federal government asserts its authority, the future of the U.S.-Mexico border remains uncertain. This is a standoff with no easy resolution in sight. As the crisis continues, the tension between state and federal authorities is only set to intensify. The outcome of this standoff will shape not just the future of the Texas-Mexico border, but the future of immigration policy across the United States.